We'll start with a 7-line prayer and Dichin Barwa, blazing great bliss prayer. Which is Dichin Barwa in here? Yeah. So starting on page 1 with the 7-line prayer to Guru Rinpoche, and then we'll go to page 5, the Wangdu, the Great Cloud of Blessing prayer. Page 5.
Tibetani Pangola Matambi Shabia, Dosama Mepala, Bosum Kuba Chembongo, the Chatral, Chemchok, Shingel of the Javapun during things by a Jew, Kazamili, Kabara, Java, and the Jews of Tanya. Yusomla Manam Kuchat, choose along the Chubu Bombani, or Syrians on which you know they do the no truth in when Chenchu Jabola and Chimbishia can get music to the partition, Salam Titemba, Senzeba, and then Gimel Lacha. Children's on Henia Zodon, where Songa know him, that's it, Tango, Panakan, the one time. Jimmy Jerry Yogola Kucha, so Chittle Jerry Siposhiwala, another to be on some shower, someone punctured around. Jimmy Chuja Bola Kucha, Chujer the Baba Human, the share, Jiromo, Kada in the year, Zupa Chamber, Long Longo Pimbin Mala Kucha, some joking on Bamala, Kundan Chukutan, Wong Chamber, Yamin Aga, one for Sorande. 2year men rebel singular, 2 year men rebel singular, 2 year men rebel singular, but a tunic on the journal, the Orgyen is yet touched. Never dungeon number Zochan Bow, Orgyen Chemchok, love Chatral. That's on Robilona Chula, you can't get some Jora yet, name in that. The gun of the Bassan, the soul, the Lankan. Jerene Banjero, Yaraduga, Banzumba, Teratum, Tabatam, water to be Sonny Channel, the Shishi, Kandashu, Pongunjigana, the Shikomotiba Council. The Hinderton between the chamber of yes, and the bottom in the Shishis. Oh, that's all it is. In here, that and walk. In it, that right. Today. In here. 다 출세를 내는데 그게되나 그게나 맞춰다 근데 대견도 양 다 자지도 소리 근데 다 말하는 이쪽에 담지 근데 참아라 다 먹네 근데 다 자기 내가 참으시도 다 근데 뒤에 다 말하는 저거 다 트레이닝 주는데 Yes.
So first, to everyone that has come here to attend this Dharma teaching, to all of those that have actually come here, all of you, likewise to all of you watching through the magic of the internet, Tashi Dalek, and welcome to all of you. So we'll start out this Dharma teaching with a brief introduction to the topic of this practice. So first, starting out, for all of us receiving these teachings to give rise to the precious mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, the supreme of all intentions, thinking that we're receiving these teachings, listening to these teachings of the Dharma, and having listened to them, feeling a need to put them into practice, listening to them and taking them into our own experience for the sake of personally leading every sentient being as vast a number as the sky is vast to the level of complete enlightenment, the stage of Buddhahood. So please first now give rise to that proper motivation for receiving these teachings, the motivation of bodhicitta.
de tadatani Lojong shabjas. Anita digi zawandawote kareli jabu yorasena. Anita de the butcher much in zebe zuba jimbo longen in the Kunzan and Sharon Sangende. Anita Korangata digi in a chiki zawandawote teles.
So the main subject matter of our teachings, of this series of teachings, is the 100-day practice of Lojong, the 100-day mind training, or Lojong practice in Tibetan, Lojong in English, mind training. So that's the practice we're going to be engaging in, and the root text that this practice is based on is the text composed by Palcho Rinpoche, the instructions on the preliminary practices of Dzogchen, Longchen, Ningtek, called Words of My Perfect Teacher. So the root text, the foundational text of this practice we'll be learning is this text, Words of My Perfect Teacher.
Sharjun, and it up after the Tama, and that Nondra, Junruta, and Ejik, Combatin, Lessi Java, and that Dijik Namela, we said the Tajik Marans over Yang and the Tadamarans of our journey. And it tell that any Khenpo Ngagchung, that was a teaching Agmos, that Kundam Agmon. 군사람이 시험을 승지세. 네 영다 지금 아직 챙겨서 야 하나 대치부 대자고 지기요래.
So Palcho Rinpoche's Words of My Perfect Teacher is composed based on the direct instructions, the oral guidance that he received from his teacher, Jigme Gyaltsen Nyugu. And then to join, to practice, to make a practice of this Palcho Rinpoche's composition, which is in accord with the direct instructions he received from his teacher. Then Katok Khenpo Khenpo Naga or Khenpo Ngagchung composed what in English is translated now as the guides to a guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher. This book, which Rinpoche also has here, which is this kind of extensive, thick, composition.
다 쪼들에 다 정말 좀 냠내다. 얘네 막 잘네. 아다디 샤롱데 미세지당 가서다. 트기당다 진짜 봐라. 제게 미세겠다. 냠내지 고람다 잘네. 얘네 냠슬래 소리지. 자도 얘네 양 디나나. 얘네 양 때에서 마스터 받아서 양 때에서야 가서 주지. 근데 조금만 몰람자고 지랬더니 제체지. 비슷한 거였어.
Zindide.
승리스는
And
then they managed to find another chamber. Then young get them to his gender. And had a shadow and this can get down and use in this center. And quite a Java. They draw my head and it so delaya. And then young subjected for the rest.
Soon the Nyaman Chetangi Jaya.
Delayata. Yamland the judge, taking no master by ya. And that let me
Sabotoyata.
라미기 샤준들의 요로 양마 송양이 샤준데서 근데 양파 생기기 좋다 그랬어.
So we won't be primarily focusing on the root text, Words of My Perfect Teacher. So the guide to Words of My Perfect Teacher, Khenpo Ngagchung's text, really takes from the root text and takes all the material from there and joins it, presents it in a way of how to practice it, how to take it into retreat, how to make one's practice the words of my perfect teacher. Presents it in that way for practitioners. And also different parts of words of my perfect teacher that might not be very clear or aren't elaborated on enough are elaborated on more, are made clear based on like the direct oral instructions received from the teaching, from Khenpo Ngagchung's teacher, are then presented in the guide. So the guide, or the Khenpo Ngagchung's text, is really how to make one's practice what's presented in words of my perfect teacher and clarifying any different unclear points. And Khenpo Ngagchung's root teacher was Lungtok Tempe Nyingma, that he received these teachings from. So the oral tradition, the actual direct practice tradition that we're practicing from, comes from that system of Lungtok Tempe Nyingma. So there's in Tibetan Shelung, and just call instructions, a system of instructions, like direct instructions. So this way of composing text or teaching generally is considered to be presented in ways that are quite easy, straightforward, clear, and easy to understand, accessible to the masses sort of thing. So in their commentaries and in the way this system of teachings is presented, this direct instruction system of teachings, there are lots of analogies presented, examples, and lots of story, history, stories from history, different analogies, different examples, so that the meaning can be, readily accessible, easy to understand. So Khenpo Ngagchung in his text here, in this Shelung, so in words of my perfect teacher, Paltar Rinpoche's text, and he's using mostly colloquialisms. It's written in a very colloquial style. There's not much poetic or very complicated grammar that's being used. It's very colloquial, to be accessed by everyone. That being said, he uses a lot of terminology and colloquialisms from Kham, from Eastern Tibet, which, if you're not from Kham, may be quite difficult for you to understand. So these colloquialisms quite easy if you're a Khampa, if you're from Kham, but they do present some difficulties for non-Khampa readers.
And then Nyingma Jela da Patrol the Jema, any Karasa. Then Mana Dombam Jia, the drama, I want
Money Dumbum.
Money, and the good Shamudwa, the Leche. Then tell her the pony to the Lama, the Leche. The Leche, Koyon, the Shadam,
Money Dumbum. Money Mound?
Money, yeah. Money stupa where there's a lot of occult money.
Money Mound, Money Stupa. Money Dumbum Chigla Pepper.
I want to do Money Chimbuchi, Money Dockers, only a magic. And he got that the Leche, Patrol Dark as a Chuba job all the way, for the man for a getting the Koya all died. Wait, the Chuba was all that is do.
Lama Shemade.
Shoot the Yaku Shiri, I said. Shoot the Leche Shiri Message in the man in the body. Choke what I get to this and brought the pen shoot the Shelboret. Let's run the muscle shoulder. And then get shoe the battle remote goes on and mission on singing it and bring the sip touch Mujores. Make sure the share is. Yes. Then could I share going to Leela somewhere? In it. Okay, oh, you was on that. I told him with it, when she did it. Garo, so what's Saturday? Imagine that in Zachko, Padro, Pirate, meet the Yayo. In a patron,
Zachukane.
Zachukane.
Yes. Michig left.
With somewhat the real. Then patron again, chats. This is. Surely Ning time messes. Tell it that. I don't know what it is. Not this. Nothing. Listen. Like chopping. I didn't pay out those. Maybe send them on board of me. Chuba Yongchong to the Mambo, can't clear the Chivins. That Churang is shared on the Nagtaria, going into me, no what Pantosas.
You can't get shit tongue de la penny.
Like that, and the code will get shiving your idea, which you do, only the name of Hakodoa. You know, that the Pantosas. And I have Doge also the pencil. You might try to meet in that layer, then watching the shares. Share jazz. What is somewhere else?
Paltar Rinpoche spent most of his time in mountain retreat, not really meeting many disciples, didn't really have many people at that time that he was teaching. Lungtok, Tempe Nyingma, and a few others, but for the most part he was kind of hidden away in mountain retreat. So one day he had come out of retreat and he was circumambulating like a mani mound, a mound of rocks with mani mantras carved in them, you know, sacred site. He's circumambulating that with his mani wheel, saying the mani mantra. There's another lama there, and Paltar Rinpoche's dressed pretty, you know, poorly, kind of in tattered rags, but in rags that looked like he's kind of a practitioner, maybe he's a monk, you know. So the lama sees him and he's like, "Oh, are you a Dharma practitioner?" "Yeah, you know, I try, whatever." He's walking around spinning his mani wheel, and he says, "Well, just doing that's not enough, just turning your mani wheel. You need to receive some teachings. You need to study the Dharma. You need to learn something." Paltar Rinpoche, "Yeah, that'd probably be good." So then this lama says, "I'll teach you. You come by me, I'll teach you something great." He goes, "Okay, what are you going to teach?" "I'm going to teach you this incredible text. Words of my perfect teacher by the great Paltar Rinpoche." So Paltar Rinpoche, because he doesn't recognize him, he just looks like this little beggar monk, you know. So Paltar Rinpoche accepts and says, "Sure, okay." So then he starts teaching Paltar Rinpoche daily. Words of my perfect teacher. Paul Rinpoche, yes, okay, he's studying day after day. Then one day a merchant from Zachuka, who was one of Paul Rinpoche's disciples, happens to show up by this Lama's side and immediately prostrates to Paul Rinpoche. Oh, Paul Rinpoche, my root guru. And then the Lama finally realizes what has happened. Oh my God, you have no compassion, Paul Rinpoche. How could we go on like this? You never tell me who you are. And begins to prostrate to Paul Rinpoche. And he says, no, don't prostrate to me. Yeah, I wrote the text, but you're teaching it. You're teaching it so well. No need to prostrate to me. And then he says to this Lama, when I composed this text, it was with the intention that it would be of benefit for the masses, for anyone. Anyone could pick up this text and receive benefit from it. And the way you're teaching now, this is fulfilling that aspiration. It's being beneficial. So please continue to teach like this, just how you've been teaching. Teach this way and teach as much as you can to whoever you can in this way.
하면서 다 대답되는 애네 고야 돼. 다 지금서 애네 내 하고 이러네요. 영 고야 돼. 연애지 보고. 마도 그냥 고야 지고 되게 그냥 말하는 속에 주. 애네 애네 당가라 좀 시다 지금 좀 대체 보기도. 그래서 그냥 다 말하는 속 해봤대요. 연애는 자체. 다 저거더니 말하는 그 출생인데 다 좀 참되나 출생인데요. 얘네 규약이 받아질 거고요.
출생. 주바.
빼나 말하는 그주 되네 야고 내봤다. 되네 지금 말하는 그주 야마다 봐. 야는 그 최다 많은 것도 사단지. 얘네 대다 디디지 말하는 마 얘네 조주 잡셔. 얘는 최반만인 규바인사. 다 간다 말하는 그 규대다.
최반만인 최반.
최반만인 규바인사. 규니. 조주 잡니 때는 다 최양 때는 매대 맞아 최대 최로. 얘네야 강사대요. 이 최바지 요도야지. 얘네 다 최대 최로. 얘네야 다 추를 강사의 추를 마사마야 팽거요. 근데 성사도 근데 다른데 가는 그 추생에도 좀 안줄라. 제제. 얘는 다 라운드들이 주도야. 근데 제가 양다고 하잖아요. 주도고요.
Turban, turban.
Yeah. Chu is naturally.
Yeah.
Turban is man-made.
Oh.
Artificially.
China churza turmari.
Channel chu, yeah.
Turban.
Turban is making.
Yeah.
Naturally making. Yeah.
So it's not naturally there. It has to be made.
Yeah.
Oh. So our text here, as we've been saying, is presented in an easy-to-understand sort of way. So even though it may be easy to apprehend, understand the meaning, have kind of a superficial understanding, really what's important is to join it to one's experience, to take that understanding into one's experience. Just leaving it at an intellectual understanding doesn't really affect or get into one's mind, doesn't impact one's mind stream. So what we've listened to, the teachings that we've received, need to be taken into our own experience through making them a spiritual practice. So when we talk about a Dharma practitioner, or practicing the Dharma, engaging the Dharma, we're talking about taking what's in one's mind stream negative aspects of one's mind stream or imperfections of one's mind stream, negative conduct, not perfect conduct, and transforming that. The Dharma is used to transform one's mind stream, to take what's not perfect in one's mind stream and make it well, make it good. So we talk about Tripa, like the Dharma has to be like, engaged. It's not naturally there. It's something that needs to be engaged in order to have any transformative effect. It's not just naturally present. It has to be engaged, enacted. So enacting the Dharma, making one's conduct dharmic, means transforming one's own mind stream to make it like perfect, authentic, good.
Oh, yeah. This song, deep in the children, in this children, that's so much than the any ranking did to Paresana. Lojong said that the Yamsa Layak, Tapshich. Then at the Danga to the Chu Pesate, take it on the Nita, Rangayam, Gomruk Goni, some Kasate. Some of them in Yamsa gesture. In the Khandro, this one I think, so that the Lojong, Maram so good, but just any. Oh, this change in it, that's what Shalom would take. But to Shalom and Nani, that's all that cheap no. And it happened just around the number 12. Then Nanga Monro, any Jamdone, any Tatipachembo, any Chemchok Senki. And it happened a culture by Yencho Day, tell that Lojong say share. There are something new, and they are touching around any Lojong Telayata, but it is a chick, any Khenpo Ngagchung Mata, Loxuto, Jason. Shadang down. And it just taken a time, somewhat taken a subject, Zerlani, Shabu Jai Konga, the native Roachik kitchen. All that this kitchen. That delegated Sang Yongdraj, look you Jama, all to this kitchen dress.
So therefore, for Dharma to be authentic, that's how it needs to be engaged. Here, what we're beginning today is a teaching on what we call Lojong, literally mind training, which goes through this process of receiving teaching. It's a means, a method for spiritual training for taking these teachings into one's own experience, which begins with the studying of the text, read these texts, Words of My Perfect Teacher, the guide to Words of My Perfect Teacher. And then we're being instructed on how to cultivate the direct experience of the meaning of what we're studying, what we're looking at. So to meditate on the meaning or cultivate the meaning in our own experience. So we study the text, receive teachings on the text, then contemplate that meaning, and then integrate that meaning into our own experience through the practice of meditation. So that whole process of receiving teachings, contemplating them, and taking them into our own experience, which is the aspect of meditation, is what we call Lojong, or mind training practice. So within our text, Words of My Perfect Teacher, we go through the entirety of the section of what's called the outer preliminary practices, or the outer ngundro. The outer preliminary practices with their 6 different sections. So we go through these 6 sections of the outer preliminaries and then begin the inner preliminaries, going through the practices of refuge and entering into the great vehicle practice, or the great vehicle, the Mahayana, through the practice of bodhicitta. All the trainings, precepts of bodhicitta up through the practices of the 6 paramitas. So this whole training is this, what we call this process of Lojong, mind training practice. So we're studying both of these texts, Words of My Perfect Teacher, and then the kind of outline, the whole structure of how to make that a practice, how to make it a Lojong practice, is presented in Khenpo Ngagchung's Guides to Words of My Perfect Teacher. So this practice of Lojong is, that Rinpoche is, that we just described and we'll be going through, it's kind of universally renowned as the 100-day Lojong tradition of Khenpo Ngagchung. So the text, so Khenpo Ngagchung's text, the Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher, really is this presentation of a skillful means of how to engage in Lojong, mind training. Rinpoche first received these teachings while he was in prison from a direct disciple of Khenpo Ngagchung, Orgyen Chemchok, up here on the left, taught Rinpoche this text while they were both imprisoned together for years. So when Rinpoche received these teachings, he kind of thought, wow, this text is the perfect prison dharma. There's nothing really that needs to be recited. It's not, long recitations, ritual sort of thing. It's really mainly about contemplation. It's Lojong. Contemplating, which you can do in private. And also in prison, there were many difficulties, extreme hardships. So this text really deals directly with that. And at times Rinpoche thought, wow, this is like the absolute perfect teaching for me in prison. Maybe it was written with like me and us here in prison in mind, because it's such a perfect teaching in Dharma. So Rinpoche received these teachings and practiced in this way, and found this particular practice to be extremely beneficial, and sees it to be it's very beneficial for everyone, particularly in prison at that time, but for everyone, this is a powerful, beneficial practice.
얘네 두고 어제 전주 다 아니 조체가 Khenpo Ngagchung 그 말에 조체가 아마 쉬려서 다만 참도를 내도 없어
참도.
나 너무 많은 좀 뭔가 옛날로 얼마 사자 가지고 충고라 되네 사고도 와 되네 코로나다 그래서 조체 그랬으면 다 같이 뭐 쉬어져도 그랬으면 이 쉬고 살아 근데 통에 그걸 나오나 쉬어야 안에 공부 되네요. 되네. 안에 공부 서로 다. 네. 다 체랑서 인터레스 다 안에 출구들을 해서 가도 와서 남아지. 되네. 봐. 네. 대바당 성경계 다달 제고 소소한게 남차 상화지 하고 보래. There's 되네 당고 얘네 다 말한소 얘네 다 되네 손도 빼는 말아서 이때 Lineage 받아서 그 남산이라고 되네 막 손제 되네 당고 로중 고쳐버렸어 되네 통고 되네 말때 로중 남 되네 로중이 고쳐버렸어这个梦境嘛，就压力多的影响不完。
梦境没关系。
梦境没关系，他可能就不这个。对嘛，是个当过梦境，你看就。
Before meeting Orgyen Chemchok, Rinpoche had studied with another master, another lama, named Lama Karmasangpo, who taught Rinpoche from within the Mahamudra tradition, namely the Mahamudra practice of the three aspects of abiding, movement, and awareness. And also had taught him some Dzogchen, some teachings on the Great Perfection, some practice on the Great Perfection. And really at that time Rinpoche there's no other teachings he was really focusing on, nothing else he was really thinking about receiving. And later they moved him out of the prison he was initially in his homeland, where he was in prison with Lama Karmasangpo. He was moved to a prison in Chamdo. And it was in Chamdo that he had met Orgyen Chemchok. And he had heard that Orgyen Chemchok was a student of the great Dzogchen master Khenpo Ngagchung. And regarding Dzogchen, he had heard that Tugel was, the highest, best practice of Dzogchen, and so he had thought, well, that's what we should ask him to teach us. So Rinpoche, with some others, requested Orgyen Chemchok to teach them Tugel. And Orgyen Chemchok responded saying, well, you all are Tulkus. You're all incarnate lamas that will in the future be of benefit to both the teachings, both the Buddha Dharma and to sentient beings. Kind of your role in the future, you have this responsibility to uphold the teachings and teach them and be of benefit. So because of that, I can't just teach you Tugel. You need to have a understanding of the entirety of the tradition. You have to know, from A to Z sort of thing. So saying that, then he began to teach Rinpoche. And he started out teaching the Namtars, the stories of the life and liberation of the great Ling masters of the past from this lineage. So he taught on the life stories of these masters, and then began teaching the practice of Lojong, the practice of mind training, and was insistent that you need to begin with the practice of mind training. It all begins with Lojong. So Rinpoche looks back at that and was laughing that they were asking for this, jump straight to the finale without any sort of foundation at all whatsoever. Where that's not how it works. You need to have a stable foundation. You need to begin by building the foundation and then build from that.
알았어. 되니? 다 기타게. 다들 군사들이 저한테 조바치 못서 거라. 조바치 뭐 나는 뭐. 다 니게 콩라고 돼 간데스게 토고 말했어요. 되니? 뭐네 가랬어요. 너만 믿자. 되니 다요. 내가 뭐는 거. dumdum-chicks. dumdum-chicks. dumdum-들이 보면 양치도 dumdum-chicks 양들이 생각하고 dumdum-chicks 나라도
Step by step. Yeah. Piece by fragment. Step by step. Fragment.
Yeah, fragment. Fragment.
Piece by piece.
Yeah.
비만네.
뭐만 믿지 dumdum-chicks 하다. dumdum-chicks 다 법에서 데려오면 오지 되는 그래시요. 다 니네 다른 조금만 이제 그냥 오케이 감정배 얘네 다른 가서 생명과 속에 통직스
semniknoso.
생명과 속에 통직스 그냥 대답이 지금 속에 럼바 레레체체
군산함의 쉘은 조천.
다 디기다 답지다는 거는 좀 용직성이지 답변은 대시거래 왔다 주는 얘네 다다단 거는 좀 변은 시직당 용직성이 이거래 기타한 게 다다다 돼서 뭐 수들 가능성 용직성이래 용직성도 양대에서 시 양대에서 몸 근데 시에 이제 몸 들으셔야 돼. 다 비기 기타한 게 다 지금 수라고 돼. 관리 종이 있어요. 나서 다 능주라고 되잖아. 다 조가 전부 다다 나라도 뭐면도 뭐 계란 집도 손에 근데 다 지금 알아서 막 던지지 요래서 막 근데 스님 와서 다 뭐면 좀 다 다 되게 다 체벌게 드모에 받아 놓은 계란 집에 얘네 다 나서 징매는 발라 얘네 예주주 처럼 다 알아서 얘네 조가 전부다 되게 가운데라고 된 종이체 근데 징매는 관이 근데 다 맞아 예를 요거는 근데 다 맞아 막 럼바이의 용식이라고 은혜기지 럼바라고 되니만 예주대 되니 좋아 예수
년기
예외주바
라스
타니오데
라스
다 rinju가 콩도 살나오데 뭐마도 괜찮아 봤다고지
라스
아니 예주대 다 되는 거라서 그래도 되니 징매는 관이 되니 예외 요거 그래 것도 많다 나서 마치 가서 있는 예주체는 다 대해서 거기 용식이 주바다 용식이 주바다 시작이거든 알아서 다 되는 알아서 보더니 다 대가랑 아파 매일 딱 되니 무슨 용식 주바다고 나는 뭐만다고 돼 가서 다가기 시작했으니까 가만히 준 거랬으나 근데 개봉아 저랑 준 거래 다 되니 뭐만 그때 그 용식 다 되니 주바데 다 발맞춰 본다고 되니 중앙 예서와 이래니 얘는 다 나는 게 주바 실차대 되니 개봉아 정리 준 거야 예서
So this system of teachings, the words of my perfect teacher, so Paltra Rinpoche's text, words of my perfect teacher, the kind of subtitle is the instructions on the preliminary practices of Dzogchen, Longchen, Ningtek. So the Dzogchen text, Dzogchen, words of my perfect teacher, kind of the abridged title. So Dzogchen here, why do we call it Dzogchen? So it's identifying the particular lineage or tradition that this cycle of teaching comes from. So this tradition, we can trace it back. We have the long tradition, or the long lineage, and the short lineage. So the long lineage that this cycle of teachings comes from began with both Vimalamitra and Longchenpa. So from the tradition of practice of Vimalamitra, called like the piecemeal system of practice, or the fragmentary, piece-by-piece system of practice of Vimalamitra. And then from Longchenpa, we have the definitive meaning instructions based on his text of Semnik Nyoso, resting in mind essence. So the tradition of practice stemming from those two particular styles of practice and teachings are what we call the long lineage of this particular system of practice. So generally, when we talk about spiritual training, and we have two different types of instruction classes. We have the instruction class based on just teaching, the teaching to understand instruction class of teachings, and then we have the experiential instruction class of teachings. So both the long and short lineage that we're talking about here fall within this category of experiential instruction teachings. So like with Vimlamitra's cycle of teachings, the piecemeal or piece-by-piece series of teachings, it's kind of identifying it as being within the instructional class of teachings. Within the instructional class of teachings, the way you progress is you receive one piece at a time. You receive the teachings, and then you're instructed to go meditate on those teachings. And then you return, report your experience, and then you receive the next step, the next piece of the instruction, the teachings, and practice in that way, gain experience in that way. So that kind of covers the long lineage of this series, or this tradition, that identifying it as coming from both Vimlamitra and Longchenpa. So then the close lineage comes through Longchenpa as well. Longchenpa passed these teachings directly on to Jigme Lingpa, and Jigme Lingpa likewise passed these teachings on to his disciples, Jigme Gyalwa Nyugu, who passed this on to Palcha Rinpoche. So that's the close lineage. Now both of these lineages can be traced in an unbroken line from master to disciple up to today. So so that covers the long and short lineage, but then in particular, our particular practice lineage comes from, directly from and stems from Khenpo Ngagchung, the kind of meticulously detailed practice lineage, or instructions on how to take this into practice, stems directly from Khenpo Ngagchung.
책대 얘네 다당가는 좀 거를 못지가 이거래. 얘네 거를 못 책에 얘네 칸로 이시 처자는 칸로 텍스 다가가지 하다. 대지가 책책. 책대 얘네 뭐만 미적게. 뭐만 미적게 얘네 아주 성대대당 양 땡생상 못해서는 나한테는 이바지. 얘네 숨바데 얘네 아주 가르잖아요. 배로잖아. 얘네 다른 나라 줘요. 바다 줘보더니 실승하다 소리 바로 똑제제리. 얘네 내게 답변을 줘보다 좋게. 샘초. 샘백. 주바 샘백 제바.
샘백 조제바.
조제바다. 간다 좀 쏘미요래. 다다 디다 가르쳐야 되니. 앞에 탐치 롱체 람변은 마소고 받을 주바 소소라고 지키는 영화를 빼나 뭐만마디 주바 근데 다른 가서 무거를 무슨 주바 되는 소소라고 지 근데 롱체 람변게 얘네 다 되는 알아서 저르다 얘네 다 탐치가 까불나고 롱체 람변보다 참아서 휴제 전에 얘네 저보다 인테 아마 니세로 하는 게 되는 다 데라 되네 말아 온케람데 랑게 되네 다
비메당 칸론
되네 데라야 다 가르세나 에네 뭐만이 되게 싶다 나 기초디 아니 라마 양베스 근데 카로 인데 그나저도 저르드 카로 양베스 근데 디니가 도나데 저르드 근데 다다 사모 양베스 칸더드니 인테 야 예스 좀 말해 되게 되니 잡출라 다 조과 침부다다 와도 선을 내가 이제 다 와도 탐지에 갔다 주세요 서로다 탐지에
셈농 맹아기 대탐.
탐지에 저 되잖아요 되니 저 된생에 다 농캔 저 된생에도 때는 답이 다다다 조과 침부 민폐 생에 민폐 공화성 거라 민폐 안고까지 중에도 농캔을 먹어 민폐 공화성 알았어. 다 디니 나란 쪽을 에네 논체람인데 다 나란 쪽 버디께서다 디니 논체람인데 다다고 봐도 성격도 요래. 다야 예주때 되는 징매를 봐라 다 빠져로 잡사 사스기 지링 그래. 근데 제가
녹야.
자차를 나와래.
징밀링 발레탄.
논체람인
레 징밀링 발레.
아니 근데 예수는 얘네 다 징매를 봐라야 이 시해지고 예수 손에 얘네 다 배드께서 되게 다 까먹 좋네 얘네 다 배드께서 얘네 농체랑 경우 다 배드께서야 주가든 예주 다 배드께서 좋네 근데 나도 가서 다 농체 인테이스는 좋아요 그래 대대는 늘 다 배드께서 얘네 인테 고마스 요래 인테 고마스 다 농체랑 다 이게 고마스 들어와 다들 다 당분 알아서 다 트레이닝을做的做qua前波是个因为些个的呢空的这些个的做qua前波往前一个可实现的我地大样地的这个说我们三步去嘛真的呀把下来的你就嘛我们在这些这个呢检查去查的也看到这是觉得搞不错好了说他이 조과 침보 로겐인데 되게 세다 나랑 조게 지 네 요르와스 아니 다 데라 제랑 조랑 아니 되네 조케다 너는 강사 직상지발라 걸 바탐지 마찬가지 내가 찬성을 드려 다뒤 탐지가 남지 망이 다 뭐로서 가르쳐는 다 대답을 쓰려와 빼는 남 탐지다 뭐이라고 되니 다 인상 세다 그래 말하는 거다 저 같은 거 굉장히 뭔로 세다 돼 알아서 근데 sonza 되니 이 답에 계속 말하는 거야 아니 cambroni zonde 타도다 그 특효톡을 받을 때는 딱 맞아 이렇게 타도 상제지 공부 맞을 거 남 뭔서 저거지 내가 뒤다 망신다고 당고대 인상 되니 근데 그런로 왔다 돼
So the instructions, words of my perfect teacher, the instructions on the preliminary practices of Dzogchen, Longchen, Ningtek. So before we get too far into this, it's important for us to understand exactly what we mean in particular here by Dzogchen and Longchen, Ningtek, or heart essence of the vast expanse in English. There can be different understandings, different, what's Dzogchen mean in this context? What does Ningtek mean in this context? Ningtek meaning heart essence teachings. So generally speaking, Dzogchen, or great perfection, the highest teachings of the Nyingma tradition. In Tibet, the Dzogchen teachings have three primary lineages, or originally had three primary lineages. So the first of these was brought into Tibet by Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava. Guru Rinpoche, who passed these teachings on to Yeshe Tsogyal. So that lineage of teachings, that particular lineage of Dzogchen that came from Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, and passed on to Yeshe Tsogyal, is called the Khandro Ningtek, or the heart essence teachings of the Dakini. So that's the first Dzogchen lineage tradition in Tibet. So then the second was brought to Tibet by Bimalamitra. Bimalamitra, who passed it on to various disciples, Trisong Detsen, Tenzin Sangpo, Prince Tenzin Sangpo, and so forth. So that particular system of Dzogchen, Great Perfection teachings, was called the Bima Ningtek after Bimalamitra, the Bima Ningtek. So then there was a third original tradition of Dzogchen, which was taught by the great translator Vairocana. Vairocana, as well as practiced by and upheld by Sri Singha and some others. And that particular tradition of Dzogchen emphasized the mind class teachings of Dzogchen. So we have the mind class, the space class, and then the Upadesha, or the pith instruction class of Dzogchen. So Vairocana's lineage emphasized primarily the mind class. So up until the time of Longchenpa, Longchen Rabjam, these three systems of Dzogchen teaching were practiced individually, were maintained distinctly. So it was Longchenpa that received the entirety of all three of these systems of Dzogchen teachings and condensed them down, brought them together into his single presentation of Dzogchen, brought them all together. So brought them together and presented them the entirety, or presented them in a series of 4 texts, or 4 sections of teachings, called the Ningtek Yabshi, or the 4 cycles of Ningtek. So the first 2 of these are called the mother Ningteks. The mother Ningteks, which are the Bima Ningtek and the Khandro Ningtek. The Bima Ningtek being the presentation on the essential meaning of the Vimalamitra's class of Dzogchen teachings. And then the Khandro Ningtek is the presentation of the system of Dzogchen of Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava. And then based on based on the Bima Ningtek and Khandro Ningtek, then Longchenpa composed his own commentary explaining the meaning and practices of both of those cycles in what are called the Lama Yangtik and the Khandro Yangtik. The Lama Yangtik being the explanation, the teachings related to the Bima Ningtek, and the Khandro Yangtik being the explanation on the teachings and practices of the Khandro Ningtek. And then he also wrote a text called the Zabmo Yangtik, which is a condensation of the essential meaning of both of those systems of teachings. Then Longchenpa composed what are called the 7 treasuries, 7 distinct texts called the 7 treasuries, which are a presentation on the entirety of the meaning of the 3 classes of Dzogchen teachings. The meaning of the mind class, expanse class, and pith instruction class of Dzogchen. The entirety of that is all condensed and contained within his presentation of the 7 treasuries, the Longchen Zodun. So that whole thing, all of Longchenpa's composition and gathering together of teachings, is what we call the higher or the previous Ningtek teachings, the previous Ningtek teaching. So then Longchenpa, 100 years or a few hundred years later, Jigme Lingpa was around, and Jigme Lingpa, remaining in retreat, met the wisdom form of Longchenpa and received the entirety of the enlightened intent of the Ningtek teachings from Longchenpa directly by meeting with his wisdom form, wisdom being, and then composed a series of practices and that series of practices, and the tradition presented, revealed the, pardon? Didn't compose, he revealed as, treasure teachings. Revealed the tradition which is now known as the Longchen Ningtek. Longchen Ningtek are also sometimes called the later, or the, not lesser, but the later Ningtek. So we have the previous Ningtek of Longchenpa contained in the Ningtek Yabshi and the 7 treasuries, and then we have the later Ningtek, which is the Longchen Ningtek revealed by Jigme Lingpa after meeting with Longchenpa. So Rinpoche thought it might be good just to give an explanation of exactly what we mean, especially because the title of our text in particular has this, Dzogchen, Longchen, Ningtek instructions. So what do we mean in this context? What is Dzogchen? What exactly does Longchen Ningtek mean here? So the Longchen Ningtek tradition of Dzogchen contains many different levels of practice. It contains the Vajrayana practices of development stage as well as completion stage, and the practices of Dzogchen, the great perfection. Everything that is required, all the various different elements and practices needed for a single individual to progress along the path and attain complete enlightenment, the level of Buddhahood, in a single lifetime, is all contained. There's nothing left out within this tradition of Longchen Ningtek. All the essential elements of practice are there. So our Lojong fits within what we call the preliminary practices of Longchen Ningtek, Dzogchen Longchen Ningtek. The Khandro meaning preliminary practices. So within this tradition that has all the various different practices, the very foundation of all of them is these preliminary practices presented here in these texts that we're studying now, which begins with the foundation of Lojong, of mind training practices, the contemplative meditation practices of mind training. So here our texts now are the very foundation, the necessary foundation for all the subsequent practices and subsequent teachings of this tradition of Longchen Ningtek. So the main point of our teaching today is about practice, about learning how to start or take this as a spiritual practice, begin a spiritual practice. So in order to engage in practice, there are 2 aspects or 2 parts to one's practice. We have the meditation session or the practice session, and then we have the session breaks. So the meditation session or the practice session, we can call the time that we're sitting on our meditation cushion, engaging in our actual practice, sitting there meditating or doing something, engaging in practice. And then the session breaks are everything else. When we've gotten up off of our practice cushion and are going about life, eating, traveling somewhere, going to work, doing whatever. So first, what we're going to emphasize today is how to engage in the session, the actual practice session.
대다더니 아디에서 뭐지 생긴다. 다 해보면 요새 양티 나는 것도 저 되는 거 생긴다고 양 미세지 저를 망해요래 저도 되지. 얘네 양찍 나서 되네 잘 사게 됐지. 얘네 다 가서 봐요. 근데 말하면서 북한에서 맞아 다 담고 얘네 고통의 자리를 보지래. 대대다 맞추 그 북한 되네 파절 차 가와 그 북한 아니 북한 아니 북한 차이 상 고통의 공래 대값서 다 나도 선물을 내야 합니다. 그거는 어디 가다 금액이 와기 제도요. 누구 문제제. 근데 남한테 제대로 들어와. 근데 양 제대로 못 제대로 다 대값을 때문에 홍보 양들을 승리지 나는 거래. 내가 루추 참지. 얘네 샤담스 그래. 내가 다 샤피한테 가리까지 제거래 공부 지요. 얘네 전부 설계 지요. 다 맞지 다다 듣기도 그때네 나는 게 수다고 돼. 다다다 얘네 십차라고 돼 받쳐야 되네. 다 제대로 못치게 되지. 또 자고요래. 그래서 그것이는 맞아 내 쉬고요래. 쉬는 냠슬 내가 얼마도 야 동그랗게서 해다 제요 말아.
통으라.
동그랗게서 해다 제요 말아. 그래서 당가서 가데서 대고래로 가데서 그거래 가데서 뜻서 제요 말아 가서 선유 제네 가서 봐도 휴대할 말아. 대때니 다 기나니서 당가는 저 쪼다다 샤롱 건 나니 쳐. 당가는 저거 아니 대대니 쳐. 다다다 손들다 너는 저 되니 쳐. 되니 되게 럼바티라 마야지는 다 뒤쳐. 양테 싸바 해 이게 대한 또 디디 다 디디처다 대단한 또 라랭을 만든 거래. 그러면서 다 디니 다 대단한 저그 당보다 아니 라랭을 만든 거라 좀다 고속하지 아니 당본 고속이
So this practice, Khenpo Ngagchung taught it directly to his disciples, and then based on their experience would progress them along. One-on-one gave instructions to disciples. So we have two texts from that were composed by direct disciples of Khenpo Ngagchung that we'll be relying on, particularly for the details, the particular details of how to practice, actually practice. So one of these disciples, a direct disciple of Khenpo Ngagchung, Khenpo Munsel, who is quite renowned these days, one of the more famous disciples of Khenpo Ngagchung, whose disciples also include Garchen Rinpoche, who has centers in America. Garchen Rinpoche, one of his main teachers was Khenpo Munsel, as well as Ati Rinpoche. So we have another sort of instructional text, a Sinji instructional text by Khenpo Munsel, directly from Khenpo Munsel on how exactly to do this practice. So then also another direct disciple of Khenpo Ngagchung, Chatral Sangye Dorje. So Rinpoche, when Rinpoche's retreat center in Nepal was first established, Chatral Rinpoche was the Lama there, was the head Lama that presided over the retreats, over the monks staying in retreat as well as the nuns, the Ani staying in retreat. He presided over 2 cycles of the nuns in retreat. Rinpoche was the retreat master, but it was Chatral Rinpoche that was the head, the guru presiding over those retreats. So Chatral Rinpoche as well, there's a text that was composed by him called Advice on Staying, or mountain dharma advice on staying in retreat, which goes through Chatral Rinpoche's personal instructions on how to practice this 100-day retreat on Lojong, as well as some other things, some other direct, personal advice on how to engage in practice, engage in retreat. So really, it's primarily from this second from Chatral Rinpoche that Rinpoche will be teaching. It's really primarily focused on his system, his direct teachings and advice that we'll be learning and engaging in practice. Rinpoche did, of course, receive these teachings, as he said, from Orgyen and Chemchok. But at that time in prison, it wasn't there wasn't so much instruction or focus on all the various different particulars, like how exactly to sit in the 7-point posture and what does the 7-point posture mean and so forth. It really primarily came down to direct one-on-one kind of a Q&A almost, going through in contemplation, really thinking about the meaning being presented and asking Rinpoche, Orgyen, Chemchok, based on what was coming up and so forth. So as we go through our practice, it will be based primarily on these two texts, these two systems, Khenpo Ngagchung's and Chatral Rinpoche's, and so Rinpoche will be presenting based on that, and then we'll have gathered together the different aspiration prayers and supplication prayers and instructions on when to recite what and so forth. Yeah. So now we will begin going through the particular stages of practice, how exactly to go through our practice. So for the main practice, we begin with the preliminary elements of the main practice. So we have the preliminaries of the preliminaries. We have the preliminaries of the practice session, and then we have the preliminaries of the main practice itself. So we have 3 sections of preliminary elements that are to be engaged in.
소신 나서봐 얘네 그때 대소바들이 지금 알아서 쳐봐시야 다 대라서 바지 가서다 계속 잘 돼서 사바지.
So first, beginning out, setting up where it is that we will be practicing. So we have our house, we're practicing in our house, then we set up our cushion, set up our place that we'll be practicing, we clean it, prepare it, prepare the Dzogchen, the field of merit, the statues, whatever shrine, whatever shrine, place of offerings we have to set up, and then make whatever preliminary offerings we have to set up. So the first thing to do is to set up the space that we'll be engaging in practice.
사모야고 다. 되니 차상을 좀 보고요. 그다음에 차상을 줘. 납태서 배. 근데 지금 동네에서 출고가 왔는데. 아니 지금 거기 온다고 양 맞아본다고 들으거나 양 갈때 지금 온다고 저는 항상 듣는 양 안고야 차더라. 근데 여매 때 근데 배비서 뭐 근데 지금 배는 줄어고 잘라라고 점거년라고 아 가도 용라에 비지 계속 가래 도미도 속는 거는 참아야고 따고 해서 다셔제네. 되니 다 계속 잠시 참았다. 괜히 곳에서 바르고 야보지 반지.
무구유나 야복혀. So then you set up exactly where you're going to be sitting well. Set it up proper so you'll be comfortable, like with a cushion, so your hips are higher, your feet are lower, and then the shrine should be set up. You should be facing directly to your shrine, directly to the mandala, the field of merit shrine. The sacred objects you have, set them directly in front of you. Or face yourself so you're facing directly to that. So then set that up well, make sure your cushion's set up properly, you're facing the shrine, and then before you sit down to begin your actual session, you should think well of everything that needs to be taken care of before you begin your practice, so that you will not need to get up for any reason. You need to go to the bathroom before you start your session, blow your nose, wash your face, whatever needs to be done. If you have a window in the room you're practicing, think, well, if the window's open like that and a breeze comes in, it's going to blow something off my shrine, then I'll need to get up. You know, really think well about everything outside of that space that needs attending to before you begin your session. Deal with that. Whatever possible problems, situations might be arising, attend to them first so that they're complete, and then begin your session. And then lock your door well, Rinpoche said. So in brief, for your session, to think well, prepare your session so that you're not going to be moving from your session. You're remaining in the session. Everything's attended to. There's nothing that can, break my session.
르데드나데 양 샘데 보마다 등산국가부 지 여러야 대서 담비 콜데나 패통이야 말이었어.
So it says set up your low seating place, set up meaning your cushion. So on your cushion place your body. Your body is set on your cushion, on the place you're sitting. Then connected to the body is one's mind. Now, if one's mind likewise is not set on the cushion, then really there's no benefit. If you just set your body there and your mind is not set there, your mind is wandering all about, then there's not going to be any benefit that comes about.
마음바게더니 자리도 마셔야지. 다 간들 생게 되네. 되니까 남도 왔다. 명한다. 되니 너도 담지 트릭스 다 깨체. 되니 너도 대반나긴 너게 나와 생대야. 막 최지 대도를 대체. 대대면은 아무다 너도 냐나 생대야 봐시. 맞아도 좋던데 야고 이거 말했어. 그래서 레드들하고 다 쓰기야.
So with one's mind not contemplating on or obsessing on previous situations, thinking about the past, different problems, situations that arose in the past, not contemplating on making schemes or plans about the future. So whatever thoughts, concepts, afflictions arising in the mind, setting them aside, leaving the mind in a state of relaxed ease. So just as you set the body in a relaxed state of ease on the cushion, the mind likewise should be set in the same way. And at beginning your session, it's very important to check on your mind in this way, to really examine the mind. You've set your body on the cushion. How is my mind? Am I chasing after things? Is my mind incredibly active while my body is resting here at ease? Is my mind continuing to engage in all sorts of things? So we need to check this and then set our mind in a relaxed state of ease, letting everything go, setting it still just like our body. If you don't do this, if you just set the body and you don't check in with the mind initially beginning your session, then your mind will be carried off all through the session and your practice will be of no benefit.
소바. 되니 가르쳐 버렸어. 다 얘한테 얘네 집 가서 얘네 아야 참 마셔 받았네. 근데 다 버렸잖아. 얘네 초라 땅에시 삼기는 샘나 담자지서.
초락 탕레시.
샘다 근데 초배고 원도. 네 마당 삼에 담자지서. 대연아 되니 나라서 연 남도 소세보나야 남산 코조 코기다 지가라서 소바라고 지역으로 되네 레오나
담자지서.
남산 그리고 하고요나 그냥 되게 다 지고 또 스케줄 그냥 뭔고 제거 또 스케줄 되는 아주 배나 에네 생그 폐바지 뭐는 강이 되니 담자 차보기 제제 어다가 가리나야 나 버티세요 그래서 나 제대로 손으로 빼는 샷 먹고 또나야 손도 샷 먹고 또나야 나그 텐데 힘에 텐데 쌀이 힘에서 아니 담자 자꾸 이바해자 되는 게 받겠어요 담자식 당공에 돈 마당스 이바데 되는 다 담자도 싸워 있는 게 다르게 틈대라 되는 담자된 게 싸워 있는 데네 시금에 삼바체체네 어다 다들 당보더죠. 네 가리인서나 빼내다가 가는 정도다 얘네 아주 참듯소라 다지 객대야도 순호를 못 받았지 봐 예서
객태바
맞아 되네 좋아서 당들 되네 말아도 객대서 철마제 되네 맞아 순호를 못 받아 대단히 봐 예서 아니 가르쳐요. 아니 다 상인보다 더 송어라. 삼지자고 뭐도 이시지서.
삼기자고.
삼지자고. 뭐도 이시티 게디자고. 남도 내버려자서.
삼기자고 미토크 예시인.
이시 되게 게디자고. 게스는 다 받쳐 당이라고. 게디자고. 남도 내버려자 송반나지. 다른데 와주더니 게이트에마다 순호를 공부하는 기관에서 다 기관이라고 그랬어. 될때 되는 내가 hunting 하나로서 yes.
So we sat down and we've checked with our mind. How's our mind? chasing after thoughts, thoughts proliferating. But if you just check in that one moment of thoughts arising, it's really not going to be that much help. Oh, right now I had that one moment. Thoughts are gone away. But then the next moment, thoughts arise, thoughts arise. So the first important thing is to check in with the mind. But then on top of that, we need to give rise to a strong vow. Make a commitment, a vow that is propels the strength of the mind. Through the vow, then it gives a particular strength, sankipel, or penpa, propels the direction of the mind. So on top of this, just checking, then we give rise to a very strong commitment. Make a strong commitment, a vow. Particular. So this vow kind of has two parts to it. So the first is, I vow to not fall sway to the power of thoughts arising in my mind. So we make this as a vow. I commit to not fall under the sway of thoughts, to not let this session go to waste, be squandered by falling sway to the power of thoughts. And then second is, I vow to not get up, break this session no matter what. Whatever happens, I will remain in the session. I'm not getting up. So making such a vow, a commitment, then strengthens the mind, propels the mind so that it can remain, so it can practice well in the session. So regarding this vow to not get up no matter what, sometimes it's said, even if my flesh is torn from my body, I will not get up from the session. I'll remain practicing. Point being that that's the type of power, strength behind this commitment, the vow to practice that you need. So this vow and this commitment is said to fulfill the two aspects of the exorcism or the expelling of obstructing forces, of the obstructors, and also the establishing of the protection sphere. So when we engage in development stage practices or rituals, we have these preliminary elements of the expelling the obstructors, where you make an offering of a torma to and offer it to whatever obstructing forces or spirits may be there, and making that offering, then they're expelled and they do not return, and then establishing the protective sphere. So this commitment, this setting up one's practice, performs that function. So in the Gudyagarbha Tantra, the Secret Essence Tantra, there's one particular verse that goes something like the king of all boundaries, king of all enclosures, boundaries, is non-conceptual primordial wisdom. By non-conceptual primordial wisdom may the king of all obstructors, dualistic conceptuality or thought, be subdued, pressed down. Anyway, pointing out that kind of relating this connection, that right here we're performing the same function as these the ritual practices of offering the terma to the obstructing forces and so forth. So we're performing that with the commitment, with setting up the power of our mind to remain well in practice without falling under the sway of the obstructing thoughts and afflictions that can arise. So all of that up to that point is the consists of the preliminary practices of the preliminaries, preliminaries of the preliminaries.
이가 튼지모로 쓰는 데는 다 유지네, 원근네, 샘지네, 내 손, 싹다.
So next we have the preliminaries of the session preliminaries, which are the key points of the body, the key points of the speech, and the key points of the mind. So engaging and setting up these key points, how they relate to body, speech, and mind.
Any time around so any Jitangata, Lady, any Carissa. Lute, Ned, Jumba, any around so any Luchanga, Zatona, long time. Any long term. Long term, any around so any Sam. The net time general is going to go by your. This one time, the net not shoot the Tambo Maiba. And yes, I will net not shoot it. Or the net not shoot the jet. I'm not doing some of the house. Oh, yeah, then chap do it on chap. Then telling around to any, yeah, chat, yam yach, and gets it from son. And then, over the telling around to Lode Jamson. Over the young son. And then, Jumba, Junze, and some cooks. Jetse ya tell a jar. Make not tell a doom.
Dupa?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, tell a jar. Make not tell about the
Yeah. First, the key points of the body, setting up the body. If there are flaws, if one's body, physical posture is set up wrong, then that leads to all sorts of problems. So as it's taught, when one's body is set up straight, properly, then the channels are straight. When the channels are straight, the winds flow straight. When the winds, the prana flows straight, then the mind is workable. So beginning with setting up the body properly, then everything becomes workable, malleable, pliable. So here in our context, the key point of the body is setting up the body in the 7-point posture of Virasana. 7 points, the legs crossed, here our text is the legs crossed in Vajra posture, the hands resting in the pose or the mudra meditative equipoise. The spine is straight. The shoulders are relaxedly erect or relaxedly pulled back. The chin is slightly tucked. The tongue touches gently to the palate, and the eyes look across the tip of the nose. So these are the 7 points. So now everybody sit in the 7-point posture. Khelchok Chema Tunan. So for those of you that can't sit in the Vajra posture, then that's fine. The most important point is to have the body straight, sit the body up straight. All the other points of the posture are the same, but if you need to sit in a chair, that's fine, but observe all the other 6 points. So this is the general instruction on the 7-point posture of Virasana. So the tongue touching the palate also relates to the teeth and lips being slightly parsed. The upper palate.
다 도스게 다들 누구네. 누구네. 주라스 왔다 네.
So that is what we call the key point of the body. That is how to set up the physical posture.
다 대답을 지금은 저 되는 이바 다 애니 나겠네 됐어. 근데 다 나기요. 다 나한테 좀다 라과라고 된 나들. 이내 차와대 맞아 롱들. 맞아 나한테 나고는 되는 말은 좀 그렇게 맞아 롱. 좀어더니 내가 제대로 자서 차와대 롱.
So next we have the key point of the speech. So on the coarse level, it is speech, and on the subtle level is lung, or prana, wind. So coarse speech really arises out of the subtle aspect of wind. So here, just the key point of speech relates to both of these. On the coarse level is one's speech, actual speech, and on the subtle level is the wind, or prana, lung.
다다 말하는 쪽들이 양 롱로세 다들 롱들에 양 말하는 쪽 롱 애니 닝만 잡듯이 빼는 말하는 쪽팀 마성비 공라 이 지금 말하는 쌈놈 드라미자체 양나 컨트롤랑 양나 두갸시에 양나 두갸체 다 되게 초려데 다다 가서 다른 분들은 내려 왔어. 그래서 가서 틀는다 랩들은 다른 판이 치고 와서 나 랩이 곧 내려 왔어. 대대 되게 곧 다른 이만하거든 와서 내려왔어. 대대 다 대마다 뭐 짱마지 버렸어. 대짱마 맞이는 와서 내가 내자가지고 양 코에 양절이 양나 거기 전에 뺏어서 말하면서 뭔데 야고 용마죠. 양나 탑죠. 양나 남도 하는 양나 들었어.
So we talk about the expelling the stale wind, or the stale wind, or the dead wind, meaning the degenerate wind, bad wind. So before we begin our spiritual practice, our meditation session, God knows what we were engaging in, what we were thinking about doing, what sort of thoughts we were contemplating. Maybe we were in a fit of rage. There was anger. We had were in a fight with somebody. There was said bad things, did bad things. Who knows what we did? And all of that agitates the wind. So that agitated wind is still there. The agitated lung is still within us. So beginning our spiritual session, we need to clean that, expel that, be rid of that. If we don't, if we try to begin our practice still with all that agitated lung, which is the stale wind, or the bad wind, then it's going to come up again. The agitation's still there. It's going to come up again and again during our practice, and really there will be no way that our meditation can go very well at all. We'll be carried away by thoughts. Thoughts will come up again and again. Even if we do try hard, our practice will still be of quite poor quality.
Chatral Chhatral Yahoji has a love with the town, it's part of Yaho Tunamato. Hot Sangha Tangamato, so what it done, Yanket sang at the load of coils of a Chatral. Was terrible, telling Marans of the temple. Any part that any no to Shetsevana, Tambo, was a Judas and some Malabukona. There was a notice of Sangha, Sankan Zerina, this is Sangha called Sangha Degdwa. 10 minutes, Marans of Robert said. So what in all the outputs on my device, quiet so one and just off.
The analogy used to describe this is putting tea or clean water in a cup, in a vessel. So you have perfectly clean water, You have a dirty cup, then you put your clean substance in your dirty cup, then putting clean on top of dirty, then that just becomes dirty, right? Of course you need to have a clean cup that you're putting your clean substance into. If you do that, then you have, you're putting something clean on top of something clean. It's all clean, good. But if you have a dirty vessel, the dirty vessel of, your dirty, stale winds, and you're putting the clean Dharma on top of that, then it all becomes dirty. It's just like that.
Oh yeah, that is the case. That the case young that I got on unit the lion test. Like what you know, Dorji Kutsurs, that is Dorji Kutsurs, the young Ling Jiang, the whole skate dinner. Ling Zani, the Zani, the whole skate nature. Dorji Kutsor, Zani, the whole skate natures.
So with this practice, also there are key points of the body that have to be done as well. So it says, placing the hands in Vajra fist. Vajra fist, the thumb at the base of the ring finger and closed in fists, like this. Then place them on the two channels of the thighs. So we're pressing, pulling our hands back in Vajra fist, pressing them on two main channels running down both thighs. So that's the physical, the body key point to be engaged in. So then it says, with the hand in the mudra of a three-pointed Vajra, seal off the left nostril. Like that. Pressing the pinky, and then the index and ring fingers behind the middle finger. So in our text itself, in both the Khenpo Ngagchung commentary instructions as well as Khenpo Ngagchung's, it says to place the hand in the mudra of the three-pointed Vajra, which is that mudra we just did. But Rinpoche says most of us probably usually just use our index finger like this, seal off the left nostril, so you can continue doing that as well. That's fine. So we're circling the left hand, blocking off the left nostril. Watching Lung enter in, inhaling, pulling it in through the right nostril, and then pressing it slightly down. Bringing it in. So we're inhaling, bringing the wind in the right nostril downward, and then pressing it downward.
간색 명차 대나긴 알아서 공자벽 되는 교환들만 모두가
공자벽이춘
칭화 목바
라스
몰라서 칭화 목바 타바탐치에스 얘네 다른 나라는 좀 그나 막고 그나 봐 다른 나라는 소탐치 막고 그나 봐 얘네 치나파 로송 삼바체스
par pen bekabzu yang marnen che bekabzu
다 팬이요.
las
그거 많이 했더니 이네 삼아간구나.
las 미과체
했더니 미과체. 다 미과체네 했더니 나랑 좀다 다 팬도 너무 나고 그냥 챌린로 송삼에서.
las. So then how to visualize? What are we perceiving while we're doing this? So we've inhaled through the right nostril, we're holding the wind down, and then during the process of exhaling through the right nostril, we're visualizing that all karma, afflictive emotions, obscurations, negativity, breakages, degenerations of samaya, commitments, vows, that have been amassed by us from beginningless time up until now. So not just in today or in this moment, this lifetime, but absolutely all of that from all eternity up until now, along with whatever given potential faults of one's meditation practice can arise, namely the states of dullness, laxity, and oblivion, or dullness, laxity, having dull state of mind, which cause problems for one's meditation. So all of that we're visualizing, perceiving as being expelled in the form of blackness, and black color expelled out. All of it is gone, expelled.
다른데 남중원도는 같은 동성 이 있어지도 이따가 노중대 값서 상만 집어마도 근데 시행도
Yes.
말해 난 남중에는 이해를 시행한 걸로 가고 저는 뭐로 시행을 내 시행도 간단히 말하면 대탄지 첩집 시행도
Tamje napobe.
가지 나고 도스제는 되네 다른 말도 다 도스제 도스제 야 도스제는 이거니마 강보대스 차원이 근데 식장이 그냥 담아봐 님들하고 차원이 도스제 근데 도스제는 것도 이해는 좀 이해는 좀제 근데 도스제는 가서 에머지제니 얘네 총 얘네 양 얘네 냠직 얘네 나오니까 아니마 도스제는 손제니 얘네 대라 얘네 오르 버톡스.
So in other contexts, generally when we practice this expelling of the stale winds, we'll have one color and one afflictive emotion related to each visual, each nostril. So here it's not that way. Through both sides we're expelling this black, this infinitude of negativity, all being expelled. So expel it out of the right nostril, as Rinpoche demonstrated 3 times, then the left nostril 3 times. And then equally out of both nostrils 3 times, equaling 9. So this is the 9-fold expelling of stale winds.
Then young 와서 딱히 튜닝 걸어서 좀 가져서 오는 거래. 딱 튜닝 걸어서 좀 돼. 대다 첩직도 다 나한게 지금 독선 염과 저리도 소탐지 다 탕제 참아마 다 제제네. 얘네 다 배징 와서 소탐지 배징 양조가 애네 다 근데 당가랑 좀 쉐기 베네티스 가서 포바로 지금 말다 야뭐 추야는 상장으로 와 대다고 되는 베네티스 탐지 지금 와서 베네티스를 상장에서 삼지게 다양 근데 참사를 주소면은 그냥 뭐 맞게는 되래서 이니직 요니직 미니직 그다음 찍히는 되래서
to the preliminaries of the session, meaning whenever you engage in a practice session, you need to have these, engage in this. So before beginning any session, do this. You perform the ninefold expelling of the stale wind, then perceiving, recognizing that all afflictive emotions, all the three poisons have been completely purified. Recognizing yourself as being like a perfectly pristine crystal bowl. So a crystal bowl that has been immaculately clean, scrubbed, that has, perfectly clean. So remaining in that state, recognizing yourself in that way, completely purified of all afflictive emotion. So also the text says that if you're short on time or for whatever reason, that it also is okay to do just three, just one to the right, one to the left, and one through both. That's fine too.
대소 담배야 참아봐 당성으로 요구해라고 되네 된다고 답변이 돼서 되네 생대배 지금 와서 오빠 탐지 집 가서 강진이 되네 거봐 되지는 것도 세상이라고 집 차오 되네 대강 때 스팅 와서 되네 냐발이야 따티배가 망진다고 세버려 되네다 와서 가르세나 다 뭔나 다 뭔야나 가리제라 다 대소 담지 배 야보용이라고 다 다다기 지금 좀마 이 대자고 싶어서 봐 얘는 메시지 얘네 닝마 마장으로도 보고 봐 이해하지는 샘사트니라고 되게 폴 얘네 되게 때문에 신년 버리야 어다때 아니 저거다 Lineage.
One thing I forgot before. So when we're expelling, you begin soft and then forceful in the middle, and then soft and ending everything out at the end, like the analogy of the barley, grain of barley, small, then big, then small again. So start out soft, forceful, soft at the end. So it's very important that you're visualizing this as well as you can. You're focusing, visualizing strongly here. If you do this properly, visualize well, engage in this practice well, then really it will cut through all thoughts of the mind. Clear away any sort of drowsiness, lack of clarity in one's mind, dullness in one's mind can be completely awakened or illuminated through doing this. It can cut through all conceptuality. So then, doing that, having performed this practice, then remain in a state of limpid clarity, of a state of like brilliant consciousness. Then place yourself in equipoise, resting in that state. It's really doing that and then remaining in this state really forms a very good foundation for whatever practice you're going to be engaging in. Doing this sets a solid basis for whatever meditation, Lojong, whatever you're going to follow it up with, by clearing away whatever unclear elements of really the mind, any sediment, unclearness, lack of clarity is cleared away. So that is the practice or the key points of the speech to be engaged.
자, 하나도 제가 양 되게 막 나는 것들이 지금 속이 지금 떨어져야 보다 막 담대하고 없어도 세미들은 지금 대소 담대 양 승에다고 지금
Also at the end, after expelling through the nostrils, then concluding with a so this, whatever Rinpoche says, what's like a stiffness or staleness in the heart, upper torso is all alleviated by this. Alleviates the heaviness of one's body, the torso, and brings this light quality to you.
나한테서 범죄 찍고 많이 봐. 쌈절에 패래. 그래서 다 고백해서 그 쌍나라고 변해서 다 내가 쌍나라고 다 잘하거든. 가만들 다 지금 뭐마겠더니 찍어서 얼마 먹으라고 찍찍 연락한 거라서 대고 쌍나. 쌍정도 봐. 제자는 매번 저에게는 양재 싸발라고 가게 찍 들고는 내가 이거로. 대나무 쌈거네요. 내 찍고 가서 그냥 공부는 제공이나 직관에 빼는 제공이나 빼는 사무방 원해서
Orgyen.
Yeah, not your concern.
I will do, yeah, okay. So, doing this isn't just beneficial for meditation practice. It doesn't just help your meditation, it really helps anything you're doing with the mind. Helps your thinking. It really is like cleansing the brain. Cleans your brain out. Say you've been working on something, drawing or writing a lot of something, you have all this like stuff in front of you. Then you do this, it's like cleaning the slate. You have an empty paper, an empty, it's blank, huh? Blank in front of you. So you've cleaned the mind. The mind is fresh, clean, ready to start whatever it's going to start. Yeah, this really helps with meditation. It's the basis, foundation for good meditation, for thinking, contemplating, engaging in whatever given activity, for resting meditation or analytic, contemplative meditation too. We could get on short today. Boots or Lodokinang and Zimnikinang. Oh, yeah. Also, in particular, doing this can really help taking exams, tests. You have some stressful exam tests, something coming up that you've had like a constant sense of worry, anxiety, fear, terror about. You do this, then it immediately clears away all that fear and anxiety that you've been carrying with you is gone. And then it being gone, then there's space for whatever to arise in the mind, the answers to arise in the mind. As long as you're in this state of fear, anxiety, constant worry, then you're not thinking well. You can't think clearly in such a state of mind. So in the Shedras, the monastic universities, the monks and nuns are attesting to this fact, that before they take their very stressful examinations, that they do this, clear the stale winds, and it really helps, clears the mind, allows them to think clearly.
That's a near day, that day. That's a caressa. And it's what I could Khandro Daya. Teresha. That is that yes, me. That Khandro and then that's all any channel to that and there. Lineage, Lojong saya. Ini teso kita jangan langsung ini, nanti jangan langsung ini cerita dulu nanti teso ini terjadi ini ya betul. Tapi bisa cerita dulu.
So we are out of time for today. We've arrived at the key point of the mind, which we can't discuss in any detail. We're out of time, but really the key point of the mind comes down to one's motivation and intention, checking one's motivation and intention. How is one's motivation? What's one's state of mind, which we'll get into more detail next time. So today, the main things that we covered were the key points of the body and of the wind, namely expelling the stale wind. So for everyone, whatever practice you're engaging in, whatever your spiritual session, your practice session may include, for now, please focus on these two aspects. Do them well, focus on them, refresh your memory of them. Yeah, until we meet again. Are there any questions, particular questions? So we didn't actually arrive at the Lojong, the mind training, yet today. So in your meditation, just having not arrived at Lojong, then rest in a state of peaceful ease. Remain in a state of relaxed ease. So practice this, how Rinpoche instructed to practice the expelling of the stale winds, and then at the conclusion of that, in that state of limpid clarity, brilliance of the mind, then remain in equipoise and practice resting in meditation in that state, with one's consciousness not falling sway or being contaminated by thoughts, chasing after the past, proliferating thoughts of the present, ruminating on the future, but to remain in a state of relaxed ease.
I have three questions. First one is for a beginner, each section, how long is the best? 5 or 10 minutes or half hour, the time each section. The second question is talking about the seven posture, talking about the spine. From the side, should look like a straight like a pencil, or still have the S curve? Third question is, we do the clean the air. Is the boy and the girl are the same or the opposite?
Tena tu assume you. Tu dang for day. The dang popa want to dawo yina. Yun ring the tun chigi nanga katsu degure. Chuzu chega karani shidao. Tena tu a niba day. Namnang chudun kinangne. Geltsik dangore. Dangore. Yune rangshin geltsik la Chemchok yore. Tena Shindu drang dawo chego yuna yamana rangshin geltsik yurkyoki Chemchok de. Tongeshak tena sumpa de lumro sel shimpi kapsu bu dang bumo ki kebar yuna. Yun ring the tune.
되는 네 다다 로비로서 산이 좀 많이 씌어래. 큰 한리밤 되네. 당고에 값서 굉장히 많이 쏜다. 요거는 된거스. 요도 그런 것들이 많이 쏜다. 그랬더니 제가 당연히 요 말했어. 윤통은 정말 왔지 쏜다. 이바데 얘네 그렇게 다 제대로 거라서 그래. 얘네 휴지 어쩌 라는 얘기하고 그러와. 그래서 서서 때는 저는 다 강한데 되네. 대체 이제는 양 강한데 되네. 대시 내가 받고 페이스북 너는 있어도 도스견 다 강한데 링바를 것도 그나 다 도스견에 대해서 것도 파는데 내스 제제는 양 어떻게 되고 말해. 근데 이 값은 남용 노력 값으로 포모를 제발 시행도 근데 로비용 때 나나 내 포모가 시행면도 롱 카도를 어떻게 시행면도 같이 승진 나면도 다들 대 자료를 뭐잖아 근데 가보면서 그 참여해서 sommer 당 하나서 내가 나오는데 제가 미세 딱 있는 하나서 다 남용 노력을 다 제대로 소이나 그래서 노력을 이게 조조도 근데 이렇게 다 그런 게 제발 다 시행면도
Dengan nangjing chena digre.
오늘 여기 제대로 되게 다 다른 것도 오늘도 그 예나는 오늘도 다 시행으로 니다 거서 니나는 양고 되더데 내가 그 용자 먹고 내가 칠 송에서 아들도 밑에서 간 진짜 싫어 무지랑라고 인사 다 여기 이거 망고 시에나지 이나 영나 까 시에나 용자 망고 이거라 디소는 데스 내가 하고 있는 송이 사례 이거를 기다려 기다 Lojong 값을 떼고 밀라고 내 하고를 송이도 없어.
So the first question, how long to practice? So we haven't yet arrived at our main practice, the Lojong yet, but generally speaking in our text now, it teaches that where it says don't practice in long boring sessions. You don't bore yourself by remaining too long, practicing for too long. That there's no benefit in that. Long, boring sessions have no benefit. So it follows that saying that short sessions many times. So that's short sessions many times. Many short sessions. That's the way to begin as a beginner in practice, for one's practice to go well. Huh?
Develop child 말했어요.
Like the long, boring sessions, there will be
no improvement.
No improvement. You won't develop by then. To the second question, 7-point posture, the spine. So the spine, you're not really forcing your spine to be straight. It's not a very forceful setting up of the posture. It should be naturally straight how it is. You're not forcing yourself. There's not a strong force to it. That being said, the neck is slightly drawn back too, but it's in its natural position, but straight, relaxed, straight. Makes sense? Without much force. And then with the, is there a difference for men and women regarding the expelling of the still winds, as it's taught here in our Lojong context and in the instructions from Chatral Rinpoche and Khenpo and Khenpo Ngagchung? It doesn't specify any difference. It says there's no difference. It's black through all three phases of the practice. There's no discussion of that's red, this is white, that's blue. In other Khandro commentaries, and for those of you that are engaging in a Khandro practice or have, then you'll know that there are differences. It's explained different, and there's but here it seems Rinpoche says, probably just for the sake of ease, that in this Lojong tradition, within the context of Lojong, that's not specified, to kind of keep it simple and straightforward. That being said, if you do practice in a different way, you're practicing your Khandro right now and have your specific instructions on how to do this, then it's fine to continue doing it that way too.
가서 뭐 노르정 양내 제대로서 그런 예전은 그래 이게는 양 대로 소소 기분도 되네요. 말은 이거 와서 그냥 관찰와 내가 걔는 그래.
So for those of you engaging in or that have practiced your Lundro, then absolutely fine to do it exactly how you've learned before. No need to change. You become habituated, you practice that, so there's no need to do it different now.
So
what will the weeks look like for like setting up the daily practice?
Yeah, for this week? Or every...
Yeah, or we'll start next week.
I guess. Maybe Wednesday we'll do this. Let's try it. I don't know. Sago Dila. Shagya Kangs in Lojong Gut Tuk Metang Tering.
Yeah, that Lojong Chenetene, that is the great. I love you, train it together. And that, where I could tell her to go at that, was Yamyaki to go at that. No, to take a chill about Tene, was accepted. Nicola any but of that other tella gold Talmud any the Chevro. That in because of maybe none of that all that I'm to the Chevro and of your current over in the Khandro, which is some your chainsaw, Khandro, Senje, the music guitar. That's a wall jambs, Jerema. Wall Senje, Joe Palatin at two rectal Yamjache. Joe
Dampasum?
Yeah, the Tamason.
Last.
And they correct a lot of chain some cigarette.
Chingsum.
Tun Arena, the chick chain. There then that Adanga over the knee, the Jenny Dama of the Kalsa, the Cherva. The net that hardos, that ring out of any best, that among out of any same, that, topping us, to song, take the amount that other two. And it all what the telling of the sitting around of Yaparisha. You know, that in Yamyakase, Yatarisha. Any Hamate, today young, any Sinja country to the Pema check. That didn't then that is on the thing, was that two zone party, two real go there. Then it is ship shot in Yima here, it teacher in the caress.
So for this week, our main practice within Lojong, you have what within the Lojong context is called the three bindings, or in another context, the three excellences, the binding, preliminary element, or first aspect, first binding, first excellent, is giving rise to bodhicitta, the excellent intention, and then the main practice itself of remaining in the non-referential state. So having given rise to bodhicitta, and for us having gone through the expelling of the stale winds, then placing yourself in a state of equipoise, free of thoughts of the three times, which is the main practice, and to remain in equipoise, remain in meditation for as long as possible. And then the conclusion, the third binding, the conclusion of dedication, dedicating the merit of one's practice for the sake of all sentient beings to be engaged in whatever given session you're practicing.
Oh, that's what I do since then. That has got taken out in the things. And that thing was more
So our homework, our assignment for this week is to practice in this way, as Rinpoche has described. And we're out of time for now, so we'll now conclude our session with dedication and aspiration prayers.
Which 9 in the first page? Oh, sorry, 12. 12. Next page. Top of that page. This very nations of this earth
May not even the names disease, famine, war, and suffering be heard, but rather may pure conduct, merit, wealth, and prosperity increase. May supreme good fortune and well-being always be.
rise, page 11.